we are finally for the show. Over the weekend at T-Mobile, Teofimo Lopez picks up the WBA Welterweight Championship with a majority decision. Most people, not all, but most people felt wasn't a majority decision, should have been a unanimous decision over Rolando Romero. He survives, in my opinion, the scariest moment in his career in terms of being hurt. I know people have pointed out George Kambosos dropped him. Sandor Martin got a flash knockdown as well. I think this is the most hurt Teofimo Lopez ever was as a professional. And while it wasn't a great fight or a really good fight, it was a tense fight because of the counter punching and the punching power of Romero against Teofimo Lopez, who still has a lot of the same flaws when he has to take the lead, when he has to pursue the other fighter, and he can't be the counter puncher, which is what he does best. But even though this fight didn't draw a great number at T-Mobile, actually a lot of those people were there hoping Romero would win. He had the crowd, and even though it wasn't a really good fight by any means, it was. I want to give credit to Teofimo Lopez again for his heart and balls, because you could contrast this with the fight with Ryan Garcia last year. When Ryan Garcia felt that power early against Romero, he kept his hands in his pocket. And in Teofimo Lopez, in contrast, I was going to say you could even argue Ryan Garcia is better equipped to pursue Romero. But, then again, Rolly had his number a little bit from sparring 10 years ago, and it was the other way around with Teofimo. But even with Teofimo's flaws and how he's always been susceptible to fighters taking a step back and countering him, he wouldn't take no for an answer. And it was Rolando Romero who wasn't willing to trust his chin as much as Teofimo Lopez was willing to trust his own. And so even though he showed a lot of the same flaws on the front foot that he's had, not always doesn't pick his hands up very well, sometimes he falls in with shots, he was the busier man. He was the man willing to take more chances. And Rolly, perhaps knowing that Teo's best offense comes off the counter punching, very judicious in his punch selection, and that helped lose him the fight. But yeah, there's a lot of talk, and I want to get into that with you, that it's a weak welterweight division. I've been saying on this show and on my channel for years that this era of boxing is not as good as previous eras, to be, but there's talk about how kind of weak welterweight is right now, and we'll get into all that. But what were your takeaways from the fight over the weekend, Raheem?
I got to tell you, I might be really alone on this, because the difference between this fight and how I normally get engaged is, like everybody else, I watch the fight live. Either I'm ringside or I'm at home and, taking it in with everybody else. But because I was working a charity event, Bash TV, shout out to Bash TV and Fight Book. We did a show on Santa Monica Pier. It was an incredible night, raising money for kids with cancer. Paulie Malignaggi pulled up, Sean Porter, your boy, my guy, Ak and Barack were there, Victor Ortiz. LA Boxing came out, and because of
Sean
that,
said Terrence Crawford was even there.
Oh, that's right. Terrence Crawford was there. I forgot, because he's retired too. This doesn't always come to mind. But yes, Terrence Bud Crawford pulled up, obviously. That's just a straight bullet. No real ill intent, just messing around. Of course, Terrence Crawford was there, and it was wonderful to have him. Obviously, the fans went crazy, and it meant a lot that he would show up for a charity event like that. And he wasn't even working. He just pulled up to support and gave the fans some attention. So that was amazing. But I say all that to say that at the same time this event is on, so is the fight. So, there's a young lady watching it on her phone ringside. I'm doing post-fight interviews. I'm keeping one eye on her phone and trying to get in the ring and do my post-fight. So I didn't really get to take it in real time. And because I knew the result after the fight without having fully watched the fight, in the interim between then and me traveling to New York, where I am now, I took in a lot of the post-fight reaction from people. And I have to say, I agree with very, very few people, if anybody. I can't even think of anybody with whom I agree with wholeheartedly. I was entertained. I enjoyed the fight. A lot of people are talking about how it wasn't a great fight. I heard it's boring. And I don't mean just fans or comment sections. I mean voices that I respect and people who know what they're looking at. I wasn't bored for a minute. I thought that there was a lot of suspense in the fight early on. What I recognized coming from Rolly Romero was not inactivity as much as a game plan to be the big puncher. He clearly believed that he was going to be able to change this fight with one punch, that he was going to be the knockout artist in there. And I think it is a calculated decision that he made, especially early on, which I didn't think that the early rounds were so easily defined either. A lot of people had Teofimo winning those early rounds without discussion. I'm not so sure. I felt like Rolly was landing the bigger eye-catching punches. Yes, punch count goes to Teo for sure, but especially first half of the fight, before 5, I wasn't seeing Teo doing anything that I would say, I wouldn't call it ineffective punching, but I wouldn't say that he was causing any damage or eye-catching shots or something where what Teo was landing, I would say, would be 3-1 at least as far as impact and effectiveness compared to what Rolly would land with one punch. It would take Teo 3 or 4 punches of separate punches to land for me to calculate that as an even, offset. Now, of course, boxing is always subjective with the scoring, and it does depend on what you like. I tend to like a sharp shooting, accurate, but effective puncher. But boy, when you get a guy who really is laying out and waiting for the big shot and lands it, and it's eye-catching and it's effective, I respect that too. So those are tough rounds for me to score before 5. So I thought going into the 5th round, this fight really was anybody's fight, and both guys were doing well. I thought, okay, well, if Rolly's game plan works, then part of the plan is to not punch himself out, not win himself, because every shot Rolly threw, he threw with major intention. Every shot was hard, and you hear that in the gym. If that's the strategy for a training camp, every shot's got to be hard. Now, a lot of times a trainer will tell you that you should never fight that way, but if you decide to fight that way, then you've got to have the engine to throw every shot hard for 12 rounds. And if you're doing that, you're not going to be really sticking the jab. You're not going to be touching a lot of punches, and that might look like inactivity, but if you're getting 2 or 3 big shots landed each round, well, you can't call that inactivity. You can call that accuracy. You can call that working your game plan, and you think you're going to break this guy down before we get to 12. That's what I thought Rolly was doing. That brings us into the 5th round. I'm not going to do the whole fight on my own. Let's go through the 5th. Let me take you through the 5th.
Well, yeah, let me
do the second half of the fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had Rolly Romero up 3 rounds to 2, 48-47 after 5 rounds. I thought after that 5th round, I had him up a point. And you know what? I'm happy you pointed out that you enjoyed the fight. Paulie Malignaggi agrees with you, and Paulie is never afraid to be critical. If anything, he leans that way in a sea of people not always wanting to be critical. But sometimes it can go the other way too, and that's why I said not a really good or great fight, but I didn't say it was a bad fight, and I didn't say it was a dull fight. And I agree with you about the suspense of, is Rolly going to catch him again? Rolly, who plenty of times had good positioning, and you see Lopez reaching with punches, susceptible for counters, again, relying on his reflexes and not always bringing his hands up. But the suspense of, is Rolly going to time him with a bomb again? And then the effort and the courage, not always effective, having to settle for body shots a lot from Teofimo Lopez. But when you mentioned he has to land 3 or 4 of his sequences, 3 or 4 punches in his sequences to offset the one bomb or one lead hook or counter shot of Rolly, he actually did that. And that's why I commend him on that, because Gervonta Davis, up until knocking out Rolly Romero, and Gervonta has low volume all the time, but in the Romero fight, I thought he was behind against Romero. He wasn't throwing a lot of punches. He was hardly throwing any punches at all. Ryan Garcia, after he tasted the power, hardly threw any punches at all. To contrast that with Teofimo, who felt that power, he kept coming and coming and coming. So between his effort and his gumption, and again, I even thought in the 11th round when he leapt off his feet off balance and got countered by a shot in the last 10 seconds of Rolly, that was an air of, yeah, I don't give a fuck if I'm susceptible to these counters. You're gonna have to knock me out, because I'm not gonna give it to you. And because he didn't just give it to him like Ryan did, he did enough to offset those occasional shots that were few and far between and deservedly win the fight. But no, I agree with you that Rolly, to me, was conceivably ahead after 5 rounds. I don't think he did enough in the next several rounds. And it wasn't a bad fight. I agree with you about that.
Let me get into the 5th round. To me, that's a pivotal round. There's no mystery why.
Could have been a knockdown.
Could have been a knockdown.
Could have been a knockdown.
It also could have been that moment in the fight that I predicted in the pre-fight show.
And me too. I said he was going to get hurt or dropped in this fight. I'm going to have to.
Where
we agreed on that.
Teo goes back to the corner after getting rocked, after getting shaken, after a moment in needing to recoup and hear something in the corner that sets him back on track. That could have been a disaster if the corner had nothing for him. But I want to talk about just a little bit before he gets to the corner. That big left hook, what I'm saying is he and Rolly didn't land a lucky shot or just catch Teo. No. That's what the other 4 rounds were about. This is what I mean by he was following his game plan. And landing that shot, opening that cut, rocking Teo again at the end of that round. Everybody is excited about the cut and the blood, and they forget that he buckled the knees of Teo at the end of that same round. That gave Rolly the confirmation that he needed that his game plan was working, that moment would come again and sooner next time, that he was breaking Teo down, that eventually he will catch him probably with the big hook, which is what he was clearly banking on, but something. He was stabbing to the body, a big overhand right he kept trying to land. He caught him a couple times, not to the same effect as the hook in the 5th, but he got there a few times, and I mean with some big swings. He missed as well, but you could see that in his mind, he's one big punch away, and he believed that he had the power to drop Teo. The fact that that wasn't called a knockdown is pivotal, I think, in the scoring, but it is also, I think, indicative that it was so close to a knockdown that Rolly's got to go back to his corner believing, well, this is working. He hasn't been hurt. Rolly hasn't been hurt. He's not gassed because he's saving every shot for big results and not jabbing, not touching, not trying to have a lot of activity. He's only looking kind of for the counter. And because Teo's so active, the counter is there for him enough to where he can build on this. That's a foundation for the fight. What changed in the 5th, and listen, let me tell you, I got to be honest. I was hoping I could come on the post-fight show and scream for Senior to get sat down. I want to send this guy home for good. Like, when I said that Senior needed to have something for him in the corner, if a moment like this came, I didn't believe that he would. I just wanted to set that up so when he didn't have it, I could come on the post show and be like, okay, it's time for you to go home. Get out of here and let some professionals step in who can level your son up. I'm not entirely talked off of that point, but I got to give him respect. The corner seemed chaotic, honestly. I didn't like the talking over each other. He's lost in the corner for the first 15 seconds of every break. He's always looking for something before he even starts giving instruction. But Teo came out in that 6th round and got control of the 6th round. He did not let Rolly build on that momentum that he created in the 5th. The cut was attended to properly. Teo was not shaken, so whatever happened in the corner, even if it looked not great, it did work. And him getting control of that 6th round was the shift in the fight. That was a moment that let Teo know that even if this happens, me getting rocked, even me getting cut, and me getting, wobbled at the end, I can get control of the fight back. It wasn't the last big moment, but it was the moment that I think set the stage for Teofimo to say he's going to win this fight no matter what Rolly does.
Well, I'd say, wouldn't you say he set the tone at the conclusion of the 5th when he started talking to Rolly and told us in the post-fight, it's going to take a lot more than that to knock me out, and in that knockdown, could have been knockdown sequence, kind of shades of Crawford against Mean Machine Kaviaskis. But yeah, I would say that was a tone setter right there before he even gets to the dad in the corner. And we talked about that before the fight too. Even if the dad's instructions aren't very good, and someone did show a clip of him saying, "You gotta hit him, bro," again at some point in this fight, we said, Teofimo might just pull through anyways on his own, with his own gumption, with his own character as a fighter. And that is what, even in the post-fight, and I know we still got the second half of the fight to talk about on your end, but even in the post-fight, that was as gracious and as classy a post-fight press conference from Teofimo afterwards, right? And in the ring and in the post-fight press conference with us in the media, and I commend him for that. This is obviously off the heels of a lot of off-color remarks and racist remarks and all that. I've heard a lot of black people like yourself even say, I don't actually think he's really a racist, even though he's saying racist things. I just think he's being an idiot. I'll leave that, up to your interpretation going forward some more. But I think that between showcasing the amateur kids on the walkout, post-fight message in the ring, even if some people think that's corny, I liked it. And then how he conducted himself as a champion, responding to adversity in this fight, his effort he put forth after getting hurt in the 5th round, and how he conducted himself afterwards. And then saying afterwards, too, that he still has a lot of things to work on. Will those things ever get shored up? The things like the hand positioning on defense and having to take the lead and not be so susceptible to fighters taking a step back and taking advantage of his fall. Will that ever be shored up at 29 going on 30 next year? I don't know. But at least he's saying the right things, and I think there's a level of sincerity to it all. And I commend him on all those things. I see maturity from 29-year-old Teofimo Lopez, who the first time he got to the mountaintop beating Lomachenko, it was succeeded by a big fall for him. Not just in losing to Kambosos, but he thought the world would be at his feet and everything, and he didn't handle stardom and success all that well the first time it came by him. Then when he gets it again against Josh Taylor, he says, I'm going to retire. He does the bit about taking out trash. He's still doing the woe is me, I'm not getting enough credit. This time around, I sense more maturity, and I sense a young man, a grown man about to have the birth of his second child, in a much better headspace to handle success. And I commend him for that, for his effort after getting hurt in the 5th round and showing signs of growth as a man. Now, if he could show signs of growth technically, that would be great. Yeah. So.
It's funny because we were kind of switching roles. Usually I'm the one talking about the mental side of it and the growth and the, outside the ring influence on what's happening in the ring. But for this fight, because I heard so many things I disagree with from seasoned, respected analysts, I am far more invested in the breakdown of these rounds.
Go on.
And so that 6th round, while I say it was a pivotal moment for Teo, I believe that it was a mistake by Rolly, because Teo got control of the round, but I think Rolly kind of took the round off. I think he was very conscious of where his energy level was going to be, and like I say, how often he was going to be able to throw hard shots without a single touch punch coming. Maybe even his jabs were hard, and we'll get into his instructions in the corner, because later in the fight, I believe for the 8th, maybe between the 7th and 8th, he got instructed to throw a hard jab. Well, the thing about that is, when he took that 6th round off, it gave Teo the confidence that he could recover, he could get control and fight back. And after closing the 5th round, the way he did, rocking Teo, that's not the time to go back and to preserve energy. As soon as that 6th round comes out, you got to test him. You got to jump on him. Now you got to put the pressure on him and make sure he's even recovered fully in that minute. Make sure that, you aren't missing an opportunity to, even like you say, if the guy isn't even is mentally rocked, or as I say, if he is mentally rocked, or whatever happens in that corner isn't stabilizing, isn't helpful, that you can capitalize on that moment and maybe get him out of there. But instead, Rolly was reserving. Rolly was like, okay, I'll bring that moment back. And he wasn't wrong. He brought the moment back in the 7th round. In the 7th round, he rocked him again. In the 7th round, the punching power was there, and it did its job. And it was Teo who walked through that fire. And to your point, it isn't the corner that got him through that. That was Teo's mentality. He went back to the corner. Teo was in control of the corner as well. Like, he's listening to his father. He's saying, okay. I think he even, and again, I might be getting the in-between rounds mixed up, but at some point he even looked at the cameras like, hey, guys, you know what I mean? He was demonstrating that he's in control now of the corner, and he's hearing the voices of his father. He's hearing the voices of his second. I think he's taking it in, but he's taking it in as the boss in the corner, not the kid who's being told what to do, but the boss who is ferreting out information and advice and deciding what he needs to do on his own. That was the difference I seen from Teo. And that, I think, ultimately down the stretch was the difference in the fight, because after that 7th round, after that success that Rolly had, he never really had another moment quite like that, because it was Teo who stepped up the gas. It was Teo who switched through the gears. And it was Teo who was able to show that not only could he walk through the best fire that Rolly had, but every time afterwards grab control of the fight back. Not with heavy shots, not with a cut or even wobbling Rolly, but dictating the pace, staying active, keeping Rolly's hands in his pockets after the 7th when Rolly's hands didn't want to be in his pockets. He did use his offense to create a level of defense, to keep Rolly off him, and scoring rounds, accumulating winning rounds after 2 big rounds that he lost big in 5 and 7. Even though it wasn't a knockdown in 5, I could have even seen that as an 8-10 round. With the cut and the wobble, I could still score that at 8-10 if I wanted to. And so after that, I'm like, okay, well, now it's time, I'm sure, that Teo, whatever he has in store for the back end of the fight, that's what's coming, right? Like, now that and when I say now that Teo, I should say, has shown Rolly that he can take the best that Rolly's given and not even go down. He hasn't scored a knockdown, right? So Rolly's got to recognize, like, okay, I'm wobbling him, I cut him, but I didn't drop him. So we're not that far down the line of where I need to be. And you got to know that while I'm sure Rolly was giving himself more credit for the big shots he was landing and thinking he's winning rounds, he's experienced enough to know that those are not rounds in the bank. Those are not guaranteed rounds. You didn't have up to the 8th round. You didn't have 4 rounds like the 5th round. You know what I'm saying? It could be very conceivable in a seasoned fighter's mind to know that you might only win 2 rounds. You might have only won 2 rounds out of the first 7. Could possibly just be the 5th and the 7th. You can't bank on that. You weren't doing enough to where you just have full confidence. So that means when you head into the championship rounds, you need to grab momentum back. If you're reserving your energy to land these big shots and Teo is busy and Teo's walked through the biggest and the best that you've given so far, you do have to step up your offense a little bit. You do have to start pushing back. I would say between 8 and 9, you got to start making your presence known a little bit more. You can't just let Teo get off. And Teo started landing bigger punches through 8 and 9. Okay, so I'm like, all right, going into the championship rounds, while everybody else, I guess, is bored, I'm fascinated. I'm waiting for these last 3 rounds, 10, 11, and 12, I think are going to be the show. I think that we might be headed for a classic on how this thing might end. I'm having an entirely different experience than most people I'm here talking about this fight. I think these last 3 rounds really could be incredible if Rolly is about to do what I think his game plan must dictate, and if Teo maintains the amount of resistance and resolve and persistence with his activity that we've seen in the first 9 rounds. So before I get into the championship rounds, I'm going to let you jump in. Like, I don't want to just...
Yeah, to sum it up, I call it character. Championship character and fighting spirit. And that's what Teofimo Lopez showed. And again, when I talked earlier about Romero not trusting his chin, there was some sharp counters whizzing by his chin. And when Teo doesn't have to kind of throw athletic arm punches on his front foot, because he has short arms and he has to reach, and he's not very good at picking his hands up and mounting pressure and those kind of things. There's more snap and more steam and more danger on his punches, and a few of them whizzed by Rolly, and I think made him think twice about even stepping up, even though this is his system now, and it's made him dangerous and awkward and powerful, is to be now the counterpuncher. After the Gervonta Davis fight, he lost some of what made him dangerous in the first place, being a crude slugger who truly gives himself a puncher's chance. Now, being a little bit more refined in his game, it makes him a little more dangerous in some ways, for sure. And we talked about that heading in, but it wasn't just that he was just as judicious with his punch selection against Ryan Garcia. Well, this was a much closer fight. He had a guy in front of him stepping it up way more than Ryan Garcia, so he needed to step it up too. And I do think some of those counters whizzing by his head made him think twice about that. And what Rolly misunderstood in thinking he won the fight afterwards, and again, the irony of comparing it, you know, to Shakur or what Devin Haney does after years of deriding that style and then wondering why he can't get the benefit of the doubt fighting in that style, is he misses some of the key elements of that style, which is a more effective jab. And against Shakur and Rolly wound up throwing about the exact same amount of punches against Teofimo Lopez, which speaks to my point about, despite the power outage, no knockouts or knockdowns in several years in Teo's fights, he could still punch. He's not the puncher that Rolly is or Ryan Garcia is, but he could still punch, because Shakur said this yesterday. His fights have a pattern. And of course, I've noticed the same thing. Jermaine Ortiz and Sandor Martin, those are movers anyways. And Shakur is usually economical with his output, defensive-minded first. And Rolly had a low output against Ryan. But with Teo, his real gift being a creative and brilliant counterpuncher, guys don't want to give him a lot. That's why guys aren't staying in the pocket, taking too many chances against him. Because if you let him get flowing and give him counterpunching opportunities in between, that's where he can really get you. But what he got wrong that Shakur got right, they threw about the same amount of punches. Shakur much, much more accurate. Rolly was whiffing on a number of lead hooks. Jab wasn't as busy. He had to take body shots, so did Shakur too, but these body shots had more of effect. That's why there was welts on the side of his body. And ring generalship. Shakur would take a step out and then reset and control the center of the ring. And there were plenty of times, even when he wasn't punching, he was backing Teofimo up. Almost 90% of the fight, not only was Rolly being backed up, but Rolly was having excessive movement. He was taking too far of a step out. And then he'd glide around the ring. And like we touched on in our technical breakdown before the fight, he actually has quick feet, but he doesn't punch off of those feet. And someone like Shakur knows how to do that and knows how to be more efficient. Doesn't, unless it's the De Los Santos fight, doesn't have to take such a distance on his step back game. And again, he controlled the center of the ring much better, and he was much more accurate than Rolly Romero was. And yeah.
You accurately talk about Teofimo's landing of some shots by the 8th and 9th round, and I'll tell you,
the 10th round, probably his best right hand of the fight. Yeah,
exactly. It was like saying he's landed some. He's picking up some steam in 8 and 9, and by 10, I was just about to go there. He's landing his biggest right hand, right, which didn't rock Rolly either. To be fair, he took it well. I didn't see any punch throughout the whole fight that I thought hurt or rock Rolly.
Because he's not committing to the exchanges as much as Teo is. He's being very defensive.
Let me click on it, right?
Right.
So what his corner was saying, Rolly's, was we need jabs, power jabs. The reason he said power jabs is because the game plan is to throw every shot with power. And I thought that up until that point, but it was confirmed when the corner gave that instruction. They didn't just say throw jabs or be busy, or they said power jabs, because every punch has to be power. But now that we're in the championship rounds, you got to start initiating, and you got to start throwing some jabs. And since every punch has to be power, that's the game plan we're rocking with, then they got to be power jabs. And to Rolly's credit, he took that advice. He didn't acknowledge his corner throughout the entire fight. He didn't show them any indication that he was even taking on board what he was hearing. But he did what they told him to do down the stretch. And that is what created the opportunity for Teo to land those counters that you talk about and to bring that right hand to bear in the 10th. And that is what made Rolly go away from those punches, go away from the activity. When he started to slow down after that, it was because his game plan, and this is where a mistake happens, and it ain't because he's afraid, and it's not because he doesn't know. It's because he was really banking on that big punch. And if to what Rolly says is true, and he's not marked up, if what I say is accurate, he was never rocked or hurt or in any trouble in the fight. Well, by 10, if you haven't at least dropped this guy and he's come back from your best punches, well, now you got to start selling out. Now you got to start taking some chances. Now you have to be the one that is pressing the action, going to a faster pace than your opponent, or at the very minimum, staying in the pocket and countering the counter. And if you're not hurt by the punches, if you haven't been rocked, if you're not recovering from anything, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. You can't be reserving energy after round 10. You can't be inactive in the championship rounds in a fight that is clearly as close as that fight could have been. And you could have been losing in a landslide. You really don't know. That's a tough fight to score if you don't know what the judges are looking for.
Well, it turns out on the official judges' cards, if he closes the show in the last 3 rounds, he wins. So they had it very close.
And the message that he got, though, at that point, I believe he was so committed to this, reserving energy, land one big shot, I'll get him out of there eventually, that when he started getting counterpunched and hit with those counterpunches that Teofimo was landing, he started to pull back from his activity and thinking, I'm still going to catch this guy in a counter. But what Rolly wasn't doing was setting traps. He didn't set any traps. He wasn't baiting Teo in so that he could set that left hook up, so that he could catch him in a moment with that right hand, in a moment where Teo doesn't see it coming. Like, those punches, they don't just happen by osmosis. Teo is an excellent fighter. You've hit him with that enough times where even though you keep landing occasionally, he's seeing it coming. He just may not get out of the way in time. You may catch him clean, but you're clearly not knocking him down, so you haven't knocked him out. And at this point, you need to be setting traps for him so that you can hit him with something he doesn't see, or hit him with 2 or 3 in a row so you can get him out of there. That's not just going to happen with a fighter the class of Teofimo Lopez. And because Rolly never set up any traps, he didn't walk Teo onto any shots. And then when he started to receive counter punches because he was initiating, which is what his corner told him to do, he started to back off on the offense and try to catch Teo clean again with 1 or 2 shots. And he never really was able to put 2 or 3 power punches together, which might have changed the fight. Like, the closest he came to doing that was the end of the 5th. And sadly for Teo, by the end of the 7th or 8th, he just never could recapture that level of effectiveness with those shots. And going into the 12th, Teo clearly believed that he needed to win those rounds. Teo did. Rolly, for some reason, thought he could take the 12th round off, thought that he could just move, thought that maybe he could catch Teo with 1 more clean one or something. No, absolutely not. Going down the stretch is where Rolly, for me, really lost the fight. But at no point, even when he pulled back on his activity, was the fight boring to me, because the punch was already there and had already been demonstrated that the power was there. And I'm thinking at any point, Rolly might be able to land something else that rocks Teo, and this time bring a 2 and 3 and maybe a 4 behind it and possibly get him out of there. But, you know, Teo's still leaking. But he missed that opportunity because at that point, you got to have those shots set up. And that is the caliber that Teofimo showed that won him this fight. On the cards, and also in my mind's eye, as far as, okay, once you took the corner out of being in charge and you made the corner working for you instead of you working for the corner, that was the time when I first saw Teofimo actually improve. He leveled up in this fight simply by taking control of his own corner and taking control of the fight going down the stretch. I give his corner credit for him coming through that fire in the 11th round. I mean, going into the 11th round, my God, man. Senior's like, what round is it? He took 15, 20 seconds trying to figure out what fucking round it is. He's asking. Like, when you hear the clackers, the last 10 seconds, can you ask somebody then? Like, between the precious 60 seconds you have between rounds is not the time for you to be asking people questions. It's a time for you to be giving instructions. I can't say fire the guy because they came through with a win, but I gotta say, fire the guy. Let him ride off with this great fight. He redeemed himself. You got the championship. He came through fire. You respected your father. He had his good moment, and then he shit all over it to me at the post-fight press conference, even immediately after the fight. The first time the fucking cameras are on Tio, the first voice I hear is Senior. I told you this, and I told you that, and what did I tell you? He's so desperate to be the star. He wants to be the guy so bad that he can't even let his son shine in his shiniest moment. He can't not say, this is because of me. He can't even keep his powder dry at the post-fight press conference and have some class. It looked like Senior was the son of Junior at the post-fight press conference. He's like, come on, chill,
his
be
son
quiet.
was coaching
It's
him
all good.
on how to be a class act in the post-fight.
He's acting like a fucking child, like he wants more attention, like a child who wants credit for being a part of the team project. You gotta get people out of your line of sight who want to step in front of you all the time. The future for Teofimo Lopez Jr. has a lot of road ahead of it. It's bright, and he, I believe, can level up as a fighter, mature as a man, and actually, I believe, hasn't reached, like we talked about, maybe he had peaked. I don't think he has. I think there's yet another summit for Tio to attain, but his father is a heavy weight on his back. He'll never be out of the camp. He'll always be your dad. Keep him in the training camp. His voice can be on the periphery, but stop letting this guy step in front of you, steal your moment, embarrass you with his immaturity. You want to be the man. You want to be the son who has taken all that his father has to give and take it further than his father could take it on his own. Now is the time. You took the reins in the corner. Now take the reins outside the ring. I really think that Senior's done the best he could do for the corner. Doesn't mean the guy doesn't have to be in your life, but this guy cannot be grabbing the mic and stealing the shine every time the cameras roll. It's a bad look, and I don't think it is representative of who Teofimo is.
Yeah, well, I've been a long-time advocate for John David Jackson, who's a Florida guy. Tio still has his Florida roots. He lives here in Vegas now, I believe. But for years now, I've been saying John David Jackson has to get another phone call. And he finally got a little bit of flowers in Clarissa Shields' last win. But he is the antithesis to that. I mean, I don't think most people even realize Clarissa Shields is trained by John David Jackson. Only people, real studious boxing people, know that. And John, been there, done that, two-time world champion, trained in Hopkins camp, and I think I've been wanting I wanted Brian Norman Jr. to give John David Jackson a call. So if I could recommend someone training alongside Senior, and you're probably right that it needs to be Senior moved on to being the second, still in the camp, because a father that trains his fighter from scratch and one that's developed a unique style with his son just knows certain ins and outs of that style that it's valuable to still have him there. Jack Mosley with Shane Mosley, Kenny Porter with Sean Porter. And almost never is the father ever going to take a back seat as the second and not the chief. But, hey, John David Jackson, that would be my recommendation, not just for Tio, but for a couple of guys. Back to the shame of this fight being for Rolly, had he have stepped it up a little bit more, had he have had the fighting spirit and the courage of Teofimo Lopez, and yes, every fighter that steps through the ring has a big level of courage, but speaking relatively between these two on this night, he might have knocked Teofimo out. But it was Teofimo who was willing to take that chance and Rolly who was not. And that was almost as much of a factor between the two of them as anything else. And down the stretch in the championship rounds, I was sitting there in my seat in press row. Once we got to around 9, I said, if you were going to do it, you would have done it already. You know, because that happens in sports, you know, like in championship sports, you have these windows where the fight is yours to seize. And in life, for some of us, maybe I've let some of those moments pass me by already, but you know, that if you were going to do it, you would have done it already. And
you're just a lot of talk of the badge. You're just a lot of talk of the badge. If you were going to do it, you would have done it before now. You would have done it before now. You're just a lot of talk of the badge.
Right.
That's usually Sean's job, but I didn't know if you were doing that on purpose or not, but
no, I wasn't. But hey, actually, Kevin Costner still got Al Capone in the end. So good quote, wrong messenger by Robert De Niro in The Untouchables, because yeah, he inevitably gets done. But to move on for a moment here, back to one point we made early on in my opening. I've said, look, back even when there was a deeper, better welterweight division with Terrence and Spence, etc., Sean and Thurman and Brooke, I always felt like the last great welterweight era was the early 2000s, late 90s. Bazooka Cuarte, Trinidad, De La Hoya, Mosley eventually moving up from lightweight, and Forrest. And that era's Rolly Romero. Ricardo Mayorga crashed that party, and once he became undisputed, then it went to Spinks and Judah, and then little guys like Floyd and Pacquiao, who were just so incredible, took over and dominated. But the last time we had real big boys at welterweight, true 147s with speed, power, killer instinct, and were standing anywhere from 5'9" to almost 6 feet tall. That was that era. So there's talk about how weak this welterweight division is historically speaking. I think that's fair. You know, forget Leonard and Hearns, and then even later in that decade, the Donald Currys and guys like that. But I think, I've been saying that, so that's fair. But, hey, I'm enjoying it for what it is. Is it at the level of the welterweights when I was growing up? No. Is it at the level of welterweights even from 10 years ago? It's another discussion, but a lot of people probably right now would say no. Let's let it play out. Let's see if a few of these young guys with talent, and Tio and Ryan and Devin keep developing, getting more seasoned as pros, even though they've been around, all of them, about a decade already, but they're still, none of them are 30 years old. But yeah, I agree with that. But real quick, Ryan and Teofimo is the fight I want to see. As long as Ryan actually takes care of his business 3 weeks from now. And the reason why that fight intrigues me is I would have to give the edge to Ryan. Styles make fights. I was there in February when he dominated Barrios, and obviously I was there over the weekend. Judging from a Styles make fights kind of thing, Ryan is the bigger welterweight. He's the bigger puncher, and he has better single shot speed than Teofimo, who's quicker on the draw as a counter puncher, and better at sometimes putting combinations together, although Ryan can put them together too. But what makes this fight interesting to me is I know what I got in Teofimo Lopez. I know what's in here. He's got this over Ryan Garcia until Ryan Garcia proves otherwise. That was as big a difference in Ryan losing wide to Rolly and Teo coming back, battling back, and winning that fight. He has shown more championship pedigree, definitely the much more decorated fighter, and character and heart in the ring. And so I'd give the stylistic advantage at 147 to Ryan Garcia. But the pedigree and the character go to Teofimo Lopez. And whether it's with bringing in a John David or not, if he actually shores up a few things, because it is not the final hour yet for improving. Unless you're Bernard Hopkins and you're getting way better into your mid-30s, or Lennox, that's rare. For the most part, you're basically a finished product at his age. But there's still just enough time, and he said the right thing after the fight. He knows he's got some improving to do. If he can make some improvements, he could win that fight. But based on the styles, I'd favor Ryan. But that's what makes that fight interesting to me as a unification now. I know what I got under the hood, the intangibles of Teofimo Lopez, and that's why that's an interesting fight to me.
At some point on the broadcast, you reminded me that I heard them say or call Rolly a belt holder, or this is for a belt. And
I think that was fair at 35 and 40. I think at 47, it was proper to call him a world champion. I think that's fair. But I think at 35, he had an interim belt. There was a regular champion, and Teal was the super champion. Tank was the regular champion. He was the interim champion. I mean, come on, at some point. And then at 140, the regular belt by dubious stoppage over Barroso. This time, beating Ryan Garcia, who has since went on to become the WBC champion. I looked at him much more so at 47 than 35 and 40 as a legitimate champion.
And this is what I'm talking about, world champions. I'm not talking about interim champions. I'm not talking about, any other variation of a title. No, those are belts. Those are certain titles. But if you have a world championship, you are a world champion. And I will not allow for this Max Kellerman drivel to penetrate through the annals of our lexicon. We will resist this. If you have won a world championship, you are a world champion. Yes, there is a distinction between an undisputed champion. There can be a distinction between who one believes is the best of the champions. But there is indeed a champion holding each sanctioning body title. Regardless of how you think they match up against the other champions, how they won it, even if they got elevated to it because somebody refused to fight their mandatory, well, that is a way to become a champion, and then you have to, I would say, consummate that championship by winning at least one fight in the ring where you defend it. I'll give you that caveat. But what I will not allow is for people to be denigrated and spoken of as lesser than world champions when they find their way to being a world champion, title holder, belt holding, official sanctioning body, observed champion. That is a difficult path to get anybody to. And sometimes it doesn't come against the best in the division. And sometimes it doesn't even come in the ring. But again, you will have to defend that title and consummate that bit of your legacy at some point. And that is an important element to it. But we can't just start disrespecting these guys or allow anybody to be the one who can unilaterally decree that this person is a champion and this person isn't, and they both represent sanctioning bodies as world champions. You have to fight your way to be undisputed. And if you think you're the best, and if everybody thinks you're the best champion of the lot, you still got to prove it. That's why upsets exist. That's why Vegas stays in business, because you don't know until the fight is fought. With that said, where Rolly lost this thing for me character-wise was he played the victim in the post-fight and in the ring. If you know, according to Rolly, which he knows, he never gets a fair shake, well, then this shouldn't be a surprise to you. If you know that the cards are stacked against you because you're PBC or you're not the favorite son or you think somebody's against Christians, I don't know what you think, but if you think that you're not going to get a fair shake, and according to you, what you've said, you never get a fair shake, then what makes you think from round 10 to 12 that you could do anything but sell out, that you can do anything but give everything you possibly have to attain that knockout, take some risks, take some shots, and give better than you're getting, and make a statement going through the championship rounds and make it impossible for them to take it away from you by getting the knockout. And if not the knockout, you got to beat this guy and bust this guy up, open another cut, drop him at least once, make it a real travesty for them to take this fight from you. That wasn't the mentality. And according to Rolly, he never gets a fair shake, so it certainly was no surprise if that's what you think, that you were on the bad end of a bad decision. Well, the bad and worst decision made in the fight then was for you not to fight the championship rounds like you were behind. And then in the post-fight press conference, the audacity, bro. The audacity. let me tell you something about guys who use religion as a shield. Okay? And I'm not talking about any specific religion. I'm saying religion in general. I don't question anybody's relationship with God. That is between you and your maker. But when you put it on Front Street and you start to identify yourself as a representative of that faith, you start to embody with every interview, with every comment that you want to make the statement that you're a representative of this religious figure, this entity. You want to represent this faith. Well, then you're putting upon yourself a certain type of presentation and behavior. You are putting a bar yourself at a certain height. There is something more to being a Christian, something more to being a Muslim, something more to being a Jewish individual. There's something more to being every faith than just saying the words or putting your hands in a certain prayer position or toting around a book. You have to exemplify that if that is what you want to be known as, if that's what you want everybody to listen to every time they put a microphone in your face. Well, it's not just this. It's how you comport yourself. It's how you treat other people. It's how you represent the very Jesus Christ whose name you call as your guide, as the principles by which you treat other people and yourself. To call Sean Zittel a blasphemer without explanation, to me, is an abomination. To be an asshole throughout the build-up to the fight and in the post-fight press conference is not representative of Christ. The way that you conduct yourself has to be in lockstep with the way that you expect people to view the religion that you're wearing the badge of. And really, while you want to point fingers at somebody else who's asking a legitimate question as their role as a press member who is at one point a friend of yours and is more than fair, call him a blasphemer, again, with no explanation whatsoever, I would say your behavior, your disrespect of not just Sean, but a lot of media members, your dismissive nature of how you not only don't respond often in press situations with anything coherent, but can be downright rude, dismissive, condescending, ignorant. That is hypocrisy. And I dare say that the hypocrite is lower in the fire, if we're going to get biblical, than the blasphemer. I would say to represent yourself in this way and to constantly reiterate Christ into your words, which is a beautiful thing if you believe it, and then behave in a way that doesn't represent that very same faith and the best tenets of faith, or not even be trying. Who's perfect? I'm not certainly saying you got to be perfect, but who's even trying? People are trying. People are giving grace. People are being kind. People are being empathetic. People are going out of their way to respect their colleagues. And Rolly's doing none of that. And it ain't just Christians, because what we've seen today or yesterday from Tank Davis and the tragic and heartbreaking death of a colleague, a contemporary, a competitor, yes, maybe even a rival. But the way he responded publicly to that moment, which would have been no better privately, but publicly it's that much more worse, an insult to the injury. To speak about a man's mom like that, a woman who's just passed in that way, and I won't repeat it. I won't go show the screenshots. If you're that interested and you don't know already, you go look it up on yourself. I won't perpetuate what was said, but understand if you've seen it and if you go see it, and then at the end, inshallah, used incorrectly anyway, as if that wouldn't even be the place where you would say that. That means, if it be the will of God, right? So it didn't even make sense in the sentence. He was just spiking the ball on being a Muslim, I guess, because, Devin Haney is a Muslim. And according to Waleed, who you may know as Javante, he's a Muslim. So Muslim to Muslim, this is how you address your brother in his moment of loss? Where is that in the Quran? Where is that in any book? But where is that in the Quran? You know what I mean? Find me that surah. It's a disgusting disgrace. And for all of these guys who are out in the public sphere and want to embrace their faith, God bless, whatever faith that is. If you're trying to be positive and present positive, I'm with you. I'm backing you. I got no beef about whatever faith you adhere to. But if you're going to do it, represent it. And don't disrespect it by being a complete jackass and then spiking it on some inshallah or on some blasphemy because I want to thank Jesus Christ for everything and Jesus Christ is my savior and all this and then treat people like shit. Get over yourself. That is not godly in any book from any faith, and no individual who represents a faith behaves that way. Be it Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, go on down the list. You can't find one that behaves that way. These guys, man, it's disgusting. I think it was disgusting from Tank Davis and from Rolly. The way he treated you, I found it abhorrent.
It is all good. As Pac said, I ain't mad at you.
I am, and it ain't all good.